Well, no, I think we've got to be firm and confident in our own values. I mean, we are far more, we, by that I mean the liberal democracies of the West. We are far more tolerant of other cultures, far more tolerant of other beliefs. We are really dedicated to equality before the law, equality of the sexes, equality of anyone, regardless of religion and race. We defend, we value freedom of expression, and these are things worth fighting for, preserving, and these are the principles that we should defend without apologetics.
And yet that's not actually happening at the moment. I've just received in the mail a copy of a pamphlet put out by the New Criterion called Free Speech in an Age of Jihad. And there was this gathering in the United States recently where a lot of people spoke about the soft jihad, what's called libel tourism, the use of Western legal structures by Islamic groups and rich Saudi princes to actually get rid of freedom of speech. And freedom of speech is something that we've been following very closely here on Shire Network News. It's not just Mark Stein and Ezra Levant, who are journalists in Canada. There was an alternative comedian called Guy Earle in Canada who's being sued by a couple of lesbians because he made a joke about them. This seems to be happening more and more often, this what we call soft jihad. Jihad doesn't necessarily mean people strapping bombs to their bodies and blowing themselves up. It can mean a lawsuit, and that's actually probably has a more chilling effect in the long run, doesn't it?
Stealth, yes, stealth jihad. I was actually present at that conference in New York. Indeed, we have to strengthen. We have launched this same group of people around the New Criterion, a federal law. We have put forward a proposition for a law which would strengthen freedom of expression, and where libel tourism would no longer be possible. So we managed to, or rather, must give the credit where it's due, Rachel Ehrenfeld managed to persuade lawmakers in the state of New York to make it impossible for people like Prince Mahfouz of the Saudi family to come to New York and sue because some court in England had ruled in his favor to sue for the money in the New York State in New York State. So they're now trying to put forward this law which would make it impossible in the whole of the United States at a federal level. So yes, we've already passed many laws which weakened our resolve already in Europe. It's so-called laws protecting Muslims from Islamophobia and so on, which are also very dangerous, which will make even a scholarly look at Islam impossible if it goes on much longer.
How easy is it to simply label someone Islamophobic? Because I'm still waiting for this anti-Muslim backlash, which is supposed to be sweeping the Western world, in which Muslims are dragged out of their cars and beaten on the streets, because I'm seeing a lot of photographs of Muslims walking through London with police escorts holding signs saying another Holocaust is on the way. And I'm seeing cartoonists in the Netherlands dragged off to prison for drawing cartoons. If there's a violence from one community to another, it's not an anti-Muslim one. I barely see this, but I do see violence from Muslims against non-Muslims.
Absolutely. This is a worrying thing. It's all one way. We refuse to accept it. We're just blind. We do not wish to confront the incredible violence, the increase in anti-Semitism, increase in the attacks on Jews in Europe, is directly related to the rise in the Islamic movement, the Islamist rise in the Islamization of the ghettos in the poor suburbs of France, for example. I've just been writing a short article on the French of Algerian origin rappers whose words, lyrics are full of hatred towards the West in general, and the Jews in particular. So no, the violence is coming from the other side. We're much too sensitive about the sensibilities of the Muslims, and then the other way around.
How do you think this is going to end? There are two schools of thought. One is the Mark Stein view, which says that demographically Europe is finished and it will become majority Muslim and certainly dominated by political Islam. And then there's the Ralph Peters view, which is that working-class white Europeans will simply not allow this to happen and that there will be blood in the streets.
Well, I doubt very much that there will be blood on the streets. Definitely not. But I think slowly stealth jihad will win through, unfortunately, and that there will be changes in the laws. Certainly in Western Europe. I don't know what the situation is in Australia or New Zealand, but I think it'll last out longer in the United States, where the First Amendment is fairly strongly defended by all across the board, the political spectrum. So I think it might last longer in the United States, but I tend to be very pessimistic in the Mark Stein view. Partly a question of demographics. I don't think that's entirely the situation, but it's really demographics wouldn't matter if we were able to integrate these new arrivals, as it were.
And the problem is that in the modern West, especially in Europe, we don't have the will to integrate them into our civilization and culture because we don't have confidence in it ourselves.
Exactly. I mean, who wants, as I think it was James Baldwin who once put it, who wants to integrate into a sinking ship? We've been saying how awful we are, how terrible we are, what horrible people we are, what terrible racists and imperialists and fascists. So why on earth would they want to integrate? It doesn't make sense. Of course they won't want to integrate. So we've got to get back our strength, get back our pride, and historically it's a very good record compared with Islamic imperialism or Chinese racism, for example.
And despite all our apparent racism and fascism and Nazism, the West seems to be pretty good at actually integrating different kinds of people into Western civilization. It's quite an attractive civilization. And where are all the refugees and the people on the boats heading for? They're heading for Western countries. What does this tell us?
That's right, exactly. They're not heading for Saudi Arabia, heaven's sake. I live in Brooklyn, and in my street there must be at least between 40 to 50 different nationalities living. It must be the most diverse street in the whole of the United States, but it does give you an idea of it's a kind of symbol, metaphor for the rest of the United States and the West in general. They're all heading for the West. I get the feeling that they're all heading for Brooklyn.
They're probably all heading for your street.
Yeah. So no, we've got to stand up. We've got to stand up. It's something worth defending. It's one of the greatest creations of mankind, Western civilization.
And one of the greatest freedoms of that is one that we take advantage of here in Shire Network News, which is to laugh at people. I mean, there's one thing I know the jihadis really hate above all others, and that's to be mocked and laughed at. They cannot stand it. Why the cartoonists keep getting it?
Absolutely, this is an important weapon in our armory. It's another one of our glories, which is just an aspect of self-criticism, really. I mean, when you think about it, satire and humor has been a part of Western civilization since the beginning, since Horace and Marshall and Juvenal and so on, right down to modern times, including the Danish cartoonists and so on. No, it's definitely worth preserving, and I hope that we wake up soon.
That was author and activist Ibn Warraq. His latest work is Defending the West, a critique of Edward Said's Orientalism, which you can get through Amazon. And you can find him writing regularly at New English Review. There's a link to the book and to New English Review in our show notes, podcast.shirenetworknews.net.